From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Hello, everyone. My name is Betsy Peterson. I'm the director of the American Folklife Center here at the Library of Congress, and on behalf of the staff and the entire library, I want to welcome you all today to the latest in our Homegrown Concert Series. For those of you who don't know about the Homegrown Concert Series, it's an opportunity for us to present the very best of traditional music, traditional dance, traditional narrative, and the very best traditional artists from around the country to come here and share their art with you. Today's event is a special event for us. It's a bit of an experiment, I guess, something we've never really tried, but we've invited 10 wonderful musicians from the greater DC area to come and work with collections and musical material in the AFC archives to listen, rework, interpret, and make it their own. And so it's going to be a wonderful program. It's also going to be webcast. So with that caveat, if you have any cell phone turned on, please turn it off at this point, or you will be webcast. And with that, I'm going to ask Steve Winnick, the AFC writer, editor, folklorist, to come out and tell you a little bit more about what this event is. But welcome, and Steve.
Welcome to the Coolidge Auditorium here in the Library of Congress. My name is Steve Winnick, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about this event. So we're calling this the AFC Archive Challenge. And the idea for this started with my colleague Jennifer Cutting, she and I used to go to the Folk Alliance International meeting every year and do a presentation on the ways in which musicians have adapted materials from the archive. And at a certain point, it occurred to Jennifer that this was a great way of encouraging people to do that, making presentations and showing how it had been done. But there were other ways to encourage people, particularly just asking them to do it. And we thought, wouldn't it be great if we set up a showcase at the Folk Alliance where we asked musicians to learn material from the archive, they would perform that material, and we would record it on audio and video and have that for the library. And so we started doing that in Alan Lomax's centennial year in 2015, and we called it the Lomax Challenge the first time, and then we realized that we should broaden it and make it the Archive Challenge. And just as an example of some of the great materials that we do have in the American Folklife Center archive, the first song that you'll hear, the first tune that you'll hear, I should say, is from a fiddler named Henry Reed, who was recorded in the 1960s and 70s by our founding director of AFC, the late Alan Jabbour. And in addition to recording Henry Reed's repertoire and placing it not only in the archive but now on the website of the Library of Congress, Alan also funded a fund that gives an award every other year for a research project that contributes directly to traditional music. So if you're starting a festival or you're making a recording that's going to actually help a traditional musician be heard, you can apply for this. And that's just one of the grants that we have in the American Folklife Center, and you can find out about those on our website, which is loc.gov/folklife. So that's just one item out of the thousands of wonderful collection items that we have at the American Folklife Center, which was founded here at the library in 1976, but which incorporated an archive that was founded in 1928 and that has materials that go all the way back to the early days of recorded sound in the 1890s. So there's a vast array of materials for the musicians that you're going to hear to draw on. And with that, I'm just going to introduce the first musicians that you're going to hear. They are Kathy Fink and Marcy Markser with their friend Sam Gleaves, and they're great performers here on our Washington, D.C. music scene. We're really happy and honored to have them here, and we're honored to have them in Washington, D.C. They're really folk royalty of our region. They've actually played for kings and queens. They've played with Tom Paxton and Pete Seeger and Patsy Montana and all kinds of wonderful folks like that. They've played at bluegrass and folk festivals all over the country, and they've won 2 Grammy Awards. And here in Washington, we have an award that's called the WAMI Award, the Washington Area Music Awards, and they've won more than 60 of those. Can you believe that? So they are really our greatest performers in this region. Kathy Fink and Marcy Marxer, we are so honored and proud to have them here. So let's have a hand for our first performers, Kathy Fink and Marcy Marxer with Sam Gleaves.
Delighted to be here. Long before there was an internet to help connect us, we shared our stories and lives through a human interweb, passed on to generations via stories, songs, poems, dances, instrumental music, and memory. The first 2 tunes that we're going to play are part of an interweb that started in Southern Virginia with the old-time fiddling of Henry Reed, that attracted a classical violin player from Florida, Alan Jabor, who shared his love of fiddle tunes with a community in Durham, North Carolina, who became the Hollow Rock String Band, who influenced ongoing generations of people who love and play Southern traditional music. From those archives, we're going to play 2 tunes in Alan's honor, the founding director of the American Folklife Center, the archives, and someone from whom we all learned a lot of music, both directly listening to Alan and all of the bands that he influenced. These tunes are called Granny and Shoes and Stockings. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1968. Alan Jabor and Karen, who's here today, I'm really thrilled about that, collected a lot of great music that you can hear in the archives. And these two tunes were recorded on August 27th, 1966, and July 17th, 1967. And that interweb is the most interesting thing to me, because I learned the tune Granny in 1977 from Wayne Erbsen at a jam session in Asheville, North Carolina. And every time I see Wayne for the next 40 years, it's like, Wayne, let's play that tune Granny. Hey, where did that come from? He goes, I can't remember. And there we are. When we were invited to do this concert, our first thought was, let's honor Alan and let's pull a couple of fiddle tunes from the archives. And we're going through all of these great tunes, and sometimes Henry Reed only plays 45 seconds of a tune, but he thought it was just enough for Alan to learn it and pass it around, which it was often. And there comes Granny, and I got to write Wayne Erbsen last night and say, we're going to perform this at the Library of Congress, that tune you taught me 40 years ago, and you can go hear the original source right there on the internet. So that was very cool. And Shoes and Stockings is a tune that I must have heard 1,000 times on the Sandy's Fancy album. Alan played a lot of music with Sandy Bradley and the Hollow Rock String Band, and this is the stomping grounds of some of us who are just about 10 years younger than Alan, coming up, listening to how this music got passed around. And I encourage you to go look online and have a listen to Henry Reed playing his music that got passed down to him. The next person we're going to represent is Gene Ritchie. And we all, three of us, Marcy, Sam, myself, spent a lot of time with Gene in different circumstances. Marcy and I at various different folk festivals and a couple of visits at her home, and one of the very famous summer picnics where people would come and play music together and hang out. And it might have been one of the last picnics that Gene was part of. Well, Sam Gleaves from Wytheville, Virginia, went to Berea, Kentucky to get his degree from Berea College, partly to ensconce himself right in the center of another big batch of archives and a huge group of great musicians that included Gene Ritchie.
Yeah, Gene was a tremendous inspiration to so many people, but I was really privileged to get to visit her at home. Gene lived in Berea, Kentucky for the last couple years of her life. She had been very involved with the college and traditional music programs there. And she was proud Kentuckian. She was from Perry County, a little place called Viper over in eastern Kentucky. That's in the coal fields and the high hills and mountains, she called them. And she carried the stories and the songs that she grew up with all around the world. And I think she was the first woman to earn her BA in social work from the University of Kentucky in the 40s, and she moved to New York and became a social worker and connected with all kinds of musicians and people like Alan Lomax, who I think recorded this tune that we're going to play today. But Gene also had strong connections with Ireland and the British Isles. She went over in 1952 as a Fulbright scholar to trace the roots of her family's music back to its sources. And I think she learned this song that we're going to play from Peggy Stanton, who was a friend of hers from Ireland. And now there's a scholarship in honor of Gene Ritchie for a Berea College student to go and do their graduate work at the National University of Ireland at Galway. And my dear friend and my housemate, Ethan Hamblin, who's also from Perry County in eastern Kentucky, is the first Gene Ritchie scholar who just recently earned his degree. So there's all kinds of wonderful ways Gene's legacy lives on.
This is called If I Was a Blackbird.
Thank you.
Once again, Kathy Fink, Marcy Markser, and Sam Gleaves with If I Was a Blackbird. And that's a song from Gene Ritchie, as they told you. And in addition to those collections that Alan Lomax did of Gene, which are on the Cultural Equity website at culturalequity.org, you can find a lot of Gene Ritchie singing and playing on there. We have Gene Ritchie and her husband George Picco's entire collection here at the Library of Congress. And that's not yet online, but you can, we only got it a couple of years ago, but you can come to our reading room here on the ground floor of the Jefferson Building to hear hours and hours of Gene Ritchie singing all kinds of great songs and playing as well. So I had mentioned before that, that the Archive Challenge really began at the Folk Alliance meetings, which since we've started the Archive Challenge have been in Kansas City. But so this is our first opportunity to bring the Archive Challenge here to Washington, D.C. And the great thing about that is that we can bring our own region's great artists onto our stage. And that's what we're going to do throughout this concert, and we're going to continue that with Seth Cable, who will be playing next. And he's going to play a song from our Ruth Reuben collection. Ruth Reuben was the most important collector of Yiddish folk songs of the 20th century. And her collection is here, and copies of it are in Canada and in Israel and other places around the world. But it's really a premier resource for Yiddish music. So I'll mention that Seth is the leader, clarinetist, and composer for the Alexandria Kleztet, which is our region's premier klezmer band. He also plays jazz, jump blues, and swing with a great group called the Natty Bow. That's B-E-A-U-X. And for those of you who might not get it, that's a great Baltimore joke, but I don't have time to explain it. Thank you. So Seth is here playing the clarinet, and he'll be accompanied by Sean Lane on the piano. So a big hand for Seth Cable and Sean Lane.
Thank you very much. How about it one more time for Kathy Fink, Marcy Markser, and Sam Gleaves? Now, as someone who studies Jewish music, one of the most incredible resources in the American Folklife Center in the Library of Congress is the Ruth Reuben collection. That's 126 reel-to-reel tapes recorded by the great folklorist Ruth Reuben, who throughout the 1940s, 50s, and 60s traveled all over the world, although mostly New York, to record music that would have otherwise been lost forever. Now, much of this material is vocal, sung in Yiddish, which doesn't do me a whole lot of good since I'm not much of a vocalist. But tape 51 is a recording of a fiddler by the name of Berish Katz. Now, Berish Katz was from Galicia, which is a region that today kind of straddles modern Poland and Ukraine. And he played for Ruth Reuben a whole slew of melodies and little snippets that he said he learned from his uncle in the old country in a little town called Glina in Galicia. And these are wonderful melodies. Most of them I've never heard anywhere else. So what I've decided to do here is put a few of them together into two medleys. And some of these melodies from Berish Katz I've transcribed rather faithfully, and we're going to perform in a fairly authentic manner, and some of them not so authentically. And you know, I like to think that Berish Katz would like some of what I was doing, although I suspect that some of what I'm about to play, he might just look at me and say, "Fair." Ruth Reuben recorded all these melodies by Berish Katz in Berish Katz's New York apartment in the Lower East Side of Manhattan in 1947. And he played these all unaccompanied on the fiddle or the violin, depending on how well you were raised. So we've had to kind of fill in the gaps in terms of harmonies and accompaniments. And like I said, I think some of the choices he would approve of, some he might not. From what little I know about Mr. Katz, he seems like he might have been slightly a crusty old fellow. Ruth Reuben has this wonderful anecdote in her notes accompanying the tape that he had a notebook that had all these songs written out. And despite her many entreaties, he refused to let her look at it. On piano, Mr. Sean Lane. We're going to do one more medley, and then there's lots more great music. Thanks to the American Folklife Center and everyone here for making this possible. This has been such a fun and rewarding project for me.
Thank you very much. Thank you kindly.
Once again, Seth Cable and Sean Lane. And you know, I mentioned all the awards that Kathy and Marcy had won. I should have mentioned that Seth, too, is a multiple winner of our Washington Area Music Awards. He's won about 15 of them. I may have just sold him short, or I may have just inflated him by one. I'm not sure. He won so many times in a row that he just, tells you how many times in a row, and then you have to kind of count and stuff. But it's around that many. So Seth Cable and Sean Lane, we're very happy to have had them here. And our next performer is actually the only group or performer that we have that I hadn't met before today. And I still haven't really met them because they actually came and practiced their music before the show. So what we could hear from outside the dressing room sounded like you're in for a real treat. This is going to be terrific. So her name is Cissa Paz, and she is Brazilian, and she's going to perform music from our Discoteca Pública Municipal de São Paulo collection, which is a collection that was made in the 1940s when Brazil was kind of entering the world stage, and a lot of scholars were going to study traditional Brazilian music, both Brazilian scholars and scholars from around the world, including Charles Seeger, who went up there, or went down there, I should say, during that time to do some studies. So there were many national congresses in Brazil and international Pan-American congresses where people were studying the culture of Brazil, and during that time, this collection was made. So Cissa Paz has decided to learn a couple of songs from this collection, and she'll tell you more about them. So she's a Brazilian singer and songwriter, and she performs in many languages. She's also a dancer, and that really informs her music, and she's going to perform with Fernando Sassi, who is a percussionist. And so please welcome Cissa Paz and Fernando Sassi.
We like nature, so we have to have a bird in here. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today, and I'm so happy to be here. Isn't this a treat to have all these amazing cultures and musicians? So it's great. I'm a local artist, and I represent my country, Brazil. And I love to go around and teach people about the culture and a little bit of the history. I only have 10 minutes, so I can talk really fast. But I'm going to play a couple songs for you that I found here at the library. And I was surprised that they had so much stuff. It's really cool. But I guess it's to be expected, right? It's the biggest library in the world, what I hear. Applause for that. Thank you. So this first song is going to be a folklore song. It's from the Discoteca Collection from 1937. So when I was listening to it, I was like, cool, I get to do something cool with this because it was just very roots. It was just percussion and vocals, and the recording was really old and hard to decipher what they were saying. So this is what we came up with. Thank you. So a little bit more about that piece. It's actually from the northeast of Brazil. And like I said, recorded in 1937. In Brazil, we have a mixture of cultures. We have African culture, we have indigenous culture, and we have Portuguese culture, which turned into Brazilian culture, which is what we have today. And it was really cool to do this research because I got to see some of the roots of what the music that I play looked like back then and kind of how it's been evolving, and now we're exploring different vibes and different nationalities and kind of putting everything together. And so this is really special to me to be able to go back and see what the roots sounded like. The next song, did you like that last one? It's kind of chill, right? Thank you. The next one is going to be more dancey. Do I have any courageous people who would be willing to dance? Come on. You? Yeah? Please. And actually, I'm going to show you really quick. Like I said, I only have 10 minutes, so really quick. The step is just like this. 1, 2, 1, 2. And you can do it separate by yourself, or you can do it with a partner. Just one. I have some friends in the back that might dance. Yeah? Come on, come on, come on, come on. Get closer. Come on, don't be shy. I know you're not shy. This is actually a famous D.C. artist named Christals Bacon. Yeah. Hey, Chris. Thanks for coming out. And he does amazing spoken word, hip-hop, beatbox, and he mixes rhythms from all over the world. I always have to give you a little plug when you come to my show. I can't help it. So anyway, he plays with me a lot. He's a great guy. So this next one is a Coco, which is also one of these very original, traditional rhythms from the Northeast that are not as well known as other rhythms. I'm sure you've heard of Bossa Nova, right? Who's heard of Bossa Nova? Almost everybody? Yeah, and a lot of people are like, oh, Cissa, you play Bossa Nova. I'm like, sometimes. Not really, but sometimes I do. I love Bossa Nova, but the stuff that I focus on is actually this kind of vibe, which is the more rootsy stuff mixed with the contemporary and modern. Anyway, let me get to the song before I lose all the time. It's called Tamanqueiro, and it's about a girl who's getting married, and she's a little bit concerned because she doesn't know if she's going to be able to afford some nice shoes to get married in. And that's like her main concern for some reason. It's important. You gotta have nice shoes to get married. That's what I hear. Tamanqueiro, eu quero par. Quero par, quero par. Tamanqueiro, eu quero par de tamanca pra eu calçar.
Tamanqueiro. Olha seu moço que eu nunca calcei tamanco. Eu quero um vestido branco da tua peça de tamanho.
tamanqueiro, quero um pá, quero um pá, quero um pá. Quero um pá de tamanca pra eu calçar. Quero um pá, quero um pá, quero um pá.
Tamanqueiro,
Quero um pá de tamanca pra eu calçar.
o tamanqueiro,
Quero um pá, quero um pá, quero um pá.
tamanqueiro,
Quero um pá de tamanca pra eu calçar.
o tamanqueiro,
Quero um pá, quero um pá, quero um pá.
tamanqueiro,
Quero um pá de tamanca pra eu calçar.
tamanqueiro,
Quero um pá, quero um pá, quero um pá. Pá de tamanca pra eu calçar.
tamanqueiro,
Quero um pá, quero um pá, quero um pá, quero um pá. Pá de tamanca pra eu
o
calçar.
tamanqueiro,
Quero um pá, quero um pá, quero um pá.
tamanqueiro, tamanqueiro, tamanqueiro.
Thank you so much, Fernando Sassi and Cisa. Thank you for the Library of Congress.
Once again, Cisa Paz and Fernando Sassi. And I'm really glad that they had you up and dancing in the aisles here and in the front. I have a little secret for you. We're all back there dancing too. So we come out and we're a little disheveled, and that's why. One of the things that we're seeing here is that this region is a great melting pot of different cultures. Everyone is coming to this region for work and for life, and they make music as well. And it's really great to live in the Washington D.C. area. When I first came here, I moved to downtown Silver Spring. That was the first place that I lived in this area. Thank you. and one day I was on a high floor in an apartment building. I left my window open, and I was a big fan of our next performer, whose name is Phil Wiggins, and I'll tell you a little about him in a second. But Phil, at the time, was in a duo with a man named John Cephas, and I was a fan of theirs through their recordings and through having seen them in concert and stuff. And I had left my window open, and I could hear on the breeze that someone was playing a John Cephas and Phil Wiggins recording. And I was like, oh, that's really nice, coming in my window. And then I heard someone just talking, and then I realized that it was John Cephas. And then I realized that I wasn't hearing a recording, that they were playing in the plaza, and I could hear it in my apartment. So I ran down, and I heard John Cephas and Phil Wiggins in the plaza in downtown Silver Spring, and it really helped me feel at home when I first moved to Washington. So I'm really glad to have Phil here now. John has since passed away, but Phil continues to play with all the greats on our scene and has played for many years with those people. And another thing about Phil that I love is that he lives in the People's Republic of Tacoma Park, which is where I now live as well. And Phil just was named one of the National Heritage Fellows for 2017, which is the highest recognition that the United States government gives for traditional folk artists of all kinds, but folk musicians in particular. Phil is, of course, a great blues harmonica player and singer as well, and he's a two-time winner of the W.C. Handy Blues Foundation Award, in addition to a lot of other awards. And he's played with, as I said, pretty much everyone. I'll mention in particular, I already said John Cephas's name, John Jackson, Archie Edwards, Flora Moulton are just three of the other people that he's played with, and he has played all over the world, I should say, as well. And he's going to be accompanied by Ian Walters today on piano, so please welcome Phil Wiggins and Ian Walters.
Thank you. Thank you. It's good to be here. So, the two songs that I've chosen to do this afternoon were both recorded. The versions that I chose to steal from this afternoon were both recorded at Parchman Penitentiary in Mississippi. Recorded by Lomax. Recorded 20 years apart. The first one that I'm going to do was recorded in 1939 by a man named Charles Butler, and it's a song that I fell in love with So I was listening to these songs that were kind of like suggestions of things that might be used in that play, and I came upon that song, and I heard it once, and next thing I know, it was 2 hours later, I was still punching it, listening to it. It's such a beautiful. That Charles Butler sang it so beautifully. So at that time, I never imagined that I would be trying to sing it for you. So that's one warning. The second tune I'm going to do is called Big Road Blues. Was recorded in 1959 by a man named John Dudley, also at Parchment Penitentiary. I've always loved that song. Has got a great like bass part with a great rhythm that I've always loved, and there are a lot of people. So John Dudley's version he got from Tommy Johnson, and then a lot of other people use that same song and put different words to it. Smokestack Lightning is one of them. The one that I like to do with my band is Stop and Listen by the Mississippi Sheiks. So just getting all that out of the way before I forget it. Also, Diamond Joe, there's a nice version done by Bessie Jones from the Georgia Sea Island Singers. I mention that because I don't really know what's going to happen next, but it's possible that a little bit of her version might get in there. So let's see what happens. Diamond Joe, come and get me, Diamond Joe. Come and get me, Diamond Joe. Come and get me, Diamond Joe. I ain't gonna work in the country, neither on Partridge's farm. I'm gonna wait till my Maybelle comes. She gonna call me Tom. Diamond Joe, come and get me, Diamond Joe. Come and get me, Diamond Joe. Come and get me, Diamond Joe. Down here I can't go home, Diamond Joe. You better come on, Diamond Joe. Come and get me, Diamond Joe. My pants are ragged, I got no patches, Diamond Joe. You better come at me, Diamond Joe. Come and get me, Diamond Joe. Going up on the mountain, give my horn a blow. I thought I heard my Maybelle sing, down to come my bow. Diamond Joe, come and get me, Diamond Joe. Come and get me, Diamond Joe. Come and get me, Diamond Joe. I'm going up on the mountain, give my horn a blow. I thought I heard my Maybell sing, yonder come my bow. Diamond Joe, come and get me, Diamond Joe. Come and get me, Diamond Joe. Come and get me, Diamond Joe. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. That's Ian Walters. Just scale. Hello. All right. you. Thank you so much.
So once again, Phil Wiggins and Ian Walters. And I mentioned that Phil won a 2017 National Heritage Fellowship Award. I should have said that that award comes from the National Endowment for the Arts. So the NEA does great work in recognizing our traditional musicians like Phil. So we do have one more performer, and this is in many ways the person who started it all, you can say, because I mentioned that we began doing this at the Folk Alliance International meetings, and we began with the Lomax Challenge. And at that time, as I said, we were documenting the ways in which modern performers were using materials from the archive. And one of the groups and one of the individuals that we already knew about and that we had worked with directly in the archive were the Carolina Chocolate Drops and Dom Flemons, who was in that group at the time. And so we actually started this Lomax Challenge, as we called it, in 2015, and we invited Dom to be the first performer of the first one of these archive challenges, because we really knew that he had done his work in the archive, he had material that he wanted to play, and he was also very eloquent in talking about why it's important to play this music and to revisit these old recordings. And in fact, he's so eloquent about that he wrote a guest blog post for our blog, which is called Folklife Today. So if you go on the Library of Congress website and you search for Dom Flemons, one of the things that you'll find is this blog post he wrote about Alan Lomax's recordings and why they're so important. So I won't say that much more about him, just to say that Dom, of course, was one of the members of the Carolina Chocolate Drops who played here at the Library of Congress a couple of times, and he's also visited many times to do research on our collections, and he is a great spokesperson for traditional music and a great performer as well. He also won a Grammy Award with the Carolina Chocolate Drops, and he's one of our favorite performers here in the archive. We love to have him come and do research and also to come and perform. So without further ado, please welcome Dom Flemons.
Thank you and good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here and again to be able to grace the stage of the Coolidge Auditorium is a wonderful thing. I always like to mention, being back in Arizona where I'm originally from, hearing about the Coolidge Auditorium is this faraway place that, I might not ever see. I had listened to a lot of the wonderful recordings of Alan Lomax, especially his wonderful interview with Jelly Roll Morton. Then Joe Hickerson's interview with Mississippi John Hurt on this very stage. And then I've been here a couple of times since those early days when I was listening to the Library of Congress recordings. The two songs I've chosen this time, took some notes here. The first medley was recorded in August of 1940 by Alan Lomax, and it was of Hughie Ledbetter, as everybody knows, as Leadbelly. And these two songs, Poor Howard's Dead and Gone and Wanna Dig a Hole to Put the Devil In, are catalog number 4469, side B, track 1 and 3. And, I picked these two numbers because I just love the story that Leadbelly told Alan when he was recording them. He said that Poor Howard's Dead and Gone was the first song sung by the first Negro fiddler freed from slavery. And then Wanna Dig a Hole to Put the Devil In is a song of civil disobedience. He said that the boys out in the fields, when they were working, they saw the boss coming. They weren't sure if they necessarily liked him that well. And so they'd say, we's going to dig a hole to put the devil in, so that he wouldn't know what they were talking about. And of course, as I travel around, I tell a lot of the audiences to say, well, going to dig a hole to put the devil in, it doesn't need much translation, and that always gets a little laugh. But, I couldn't help but want to put this one on the banjo. It's one of those early string band numbers, and I couldn't help but think about one of Leadbelly's most well-known proteges, Pete Seeger, when I put together this medley of the two songs. And Also can't help but think of folks like Larry Cohen, who have put together a wonderful compilation for Electra Records of Leadbelly's Library of Congress recordings. But let me play a little bit of this one here. I've taken this medley with me to the Candy Center when I helped celebrate Leadbelly's 125th anniversary, and then also to Carnegie Hall when they had a big Leadbelly tribute concert. And so I've taken this one all over the world with me. Poor Howard's dead and gone, and he left me here to sing this song.
Oh, how is dead and gone. Sang this song. Oh, how is dead and gone. Left me here to sing this song.
Oh, Howard is dead and gone. Oh, he's dead and gone.
Oh, how it is dead and gone. God knows. Left me here to sing this song. Been here since I've been gone. Been here since I've been gone. Like me with the derby on. Been here since I've been gone. Lord, with the derby on. A black man with a derby on. A black man with a derby on. God knows. And a pretty gal with a red dress on. Now the day I left my father's home, the day I left my friends, the day I left my mother's door, the day I left my friends, 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 the day I left my friends. Been here since I've been gone. Now poor Howard is dead and gone. Left me here to sing this song. He left me here to sing this song.
Much appreciated, ladies and gentlemen. Now, I don't like to talk about this all that much, but I went to college and I got a BA in English. And that was one of the things that really led me to listening to a lot of the recordings with the Library of Congress. I was studying Shakespeare and Chaucer, William Wordsworth, Mark Twain, you know, a lot of the classic writers. And, you know, the old ballads was something that really helped me connect with the music in a very big way. And then one particular record that came out on Rounder Records featuring a lot of Library of Congress recordings, particularly John Lomax's recordings, was an album called Black Texicans, balladeers and songsters of the Texas frontiers. And it featured a lot of recordings of black cowboys. And see, my father was a big fan of cowboy movies growing up, and I never saw a lot of black cowboys in those movies necessarily. Even though being from the Southwest, I know that there's an African-American community that is out there. And the deeper I reached into the subject, just out of my own personal interest at first, I found that there was an amazing, elaborate story that the Black Cowboys tells. Just to, I guess, to keep it concise, in a wonderful NPR piece on black cowboys and their influence on the song tradition. One of the last quotes they mention, I can't remember the professor's name right now, but he said that if one was to think of the birthplace of the West as the birthplace of America, if you only assume it's the birthplace of white America, then anybody else that comes into the story is an interloper. But through the story of the Cowboys, if you are to recognize that there were African American cowboys, Native American cowboys, and then even bigger than that, the original cowboys, the Mexican vaqueros, if you know that all of these different cultures were there, you realize that America was a diverse culture from the beginning, not just in the past couple of decades, but from the very first moments that this country was made. And I thought that was a very powerful story. And amongst a lot of the different songs I've learned in putting together a project on black cowboys, one call number, 5649 side A, Goodbye Old Paint, as recorded by Jess Morris from Dalhart, Texas, by John Lomax in 1942. One of the things that I thought was very intriguing about, because this is the thing about black cowboys, when they started writing the histories about it, African-American cowboys just kind of, fell to the wayside. That happens sometimes with histories and things like that. But one of the things that Jess Morris says that's so intriguing about the black cowboy story is that he learned this song, Goodbye Old Paint, which is one of the most well-known cowboy songs from a black cowboy that worked for his father on the range, and a fellow by the name of Charlie Willis. And then he also mentioned that he learned the fiddle from another black cowboy later on, whose name was James Neely. And so Charlie Willis played the song on the Jew's harp and taught it to Jess Morris when Jess was only 7 years old. And then he adapted that melody and that song onto the fiddle later on in life. And he always made sure to tell the story of the black cowboys who got him started on his musical career. And that's a lot of where this black cowboy story lands. Again, talking about diversity, musical, cross-cultural collaboration. It's a story that talks about that. And let me play a little bit of Goodbye Old Paint. I adapted the original field recording just a little bit so it would be on the guitar. Try to pull out some of the nice harmonies that Jess Morris did. He was a violinist. He was a classical violinist, but he said he was just as comfortable in his tuxedo and his boiled shirt on the classical stage as he was having his loud red flannel shirt at a country square dance, and that's a beautiful thing. Stephen Wade did a wonderful book, The Beautiful Music All Around Us, that speaks a lot. All right. Speaks a lot of Jess Morris and his story, and you can read more about this amazing man. But for now, a little bit of Goodbye Old Paint.
old pain, I am leaving Cheyenne. 'Cause old paint's an old pony, and she paces when she can. In the middle of the ocean may grow a green tree, but I'll never prove false to the girl that loves me. Old paint, I'm a leaving Cheyenne. Goodbye, old paint, I am leaving Cheyenne. 'Cause old paint's an old pony, and she paces when she can. Now we spread down the blankets on the green grassy ground, and the horse and the cattle were all grazing all around. Old paint, I'm a leaving Cheyenne. Goodbye, old paint, I am leaving Cheyenne. 'Cause old paint's an old pony, and she paces when she can. Now the last time I saw her, it was late in the fall. She was riding old paint and leading old ball. Old paint, I'm a leaving Cheyenne. Goodbye, old paint, I am leaving Cheyenne. 'Cause old paint's an old pony, and she paces when she can. Old paint had a coat on the Rio Grande, and the colt couldn't pace, so he named her Cheyenne. Old paint, I'm a leaving Cheyenne. Goodbye, old paint, I am leaving Cheyenne. 'Cause old paint's an old pony, and she paces when she can. Now my foot's in the stirrup, and the bridle's in my hand. Oh, fair ladies, I'm a leaving Cheyenne. I'm a little donny, my pony won't stand. Well, fair ladies, I'm a leaving Cheyenne. I'm a little donny, my pony won't stand. Goodbye, I'm a little donny, my pony won't stand. Goodbye, I'm a little donny, my pony won't stand.
Thank you all again.
Now, Dom, before you
Before you leave Cheyenne, Dom, we're going to ask the rest of the performers to come out and take a bow with you. So come on out, everybody. Take a bow with Dom. And we want to say thank you to all of these fantastic performers who came and performed music from our archive. We are the American Folklife Center at the Library of Congress. Look for us at loc.gov/folklife, and you will find a lot of this great music and a lot of other great music as well. And we are so happy and honored and proud to have all of these great musicians here with us in the Coolidge Auditorium. And I should also mention that a few of these musicians have CDs with them, and if you want to get those CDs, you can come down and talk to them by the front of the stage. And I guess one last thing I should mention is that 1 week from tomorrow, the Fairfield Four will be here, the gospel group. So once again, the Archive Challenge players here at the Library of Congress. So come on down. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.